Labour announced bold plans to overhaul the asylum system. The controversies continue around the assisted dying bill. And are the BBC biased? Well, let's talk about it and let's get political. Hello, welcome to Let's Get Political on Quays TV, a student political show where we discuss the big things happening in British politics. I'd like to welcome a new guest, Shahab, and two returning guests, Charlie Waler and Logan Singleton. And I realised I never actually introduced myself yet, and it's the third show, so I'm your host, Matthew Hargreaves. So we have three topics, and we will start with the first one, all about plans to fast-track the deportation of illegal migrants as part of sweeping reforms of the UK's asylum policy. They've been announced by Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood. The Community Secretary Steve Reid has said the government is absolutely committed to pushing through major asylum reforms, despite a backlash from some Labour MPs. So this means anyone granted asylum will be returned home if their country is deemed safe in the future. This includes forcing refugees to wait 20 years for permanent residency and deporting more families who have been rejected for asylum. This was 5 years, so it's a big jump. Shahab, what's your reaction to this?
Well, simply put, citizenship is not a privilege that people have. It's not something that you deserve just because you've lived here for 5 years. You have to prove yourself committed to Britain and committed to the people. And so if you're not doing this, how does 5 years prove that? Shabana Mahmood's reform for that is proving that people who want to stay in Britain should stay in Britain, and is showing that the correct type, but that's a bit inappropriate. The correct people who have the ambition to remain. And so I respect it. I think it's a good decision, and I hope that Shabana is able to move forward with her reforms. Unfortunately, I doubt it because this Labour government is far too weak to do that, but we'll see.
Logan, what do you think?
To be fair, I'm in the same sort of agreement where if your country is at war and you need to seek asylum somewhere, happily would accept them and stuff like that. If it gets to that point where your country is safe, I don't see anything wrong with telling those people, if you have no sort of permanent plans to stay in the UK to get a job or help the economy in any sort of way, then ideally you should go help your own country rebuild itself. I think they did that in other. I think there was a time. Which country was it? I think it was like Syria or Iraq or something. One of them got rid of a regime, and we were discussing about sending a bunch of the refugees that came over during that time back in order to help that government to sort of create that job prosperity again. So I don't think it's a bad idea. Again, agreeing with what was said before, I don't think Labour is going to be able to put it forward just because they've been so weak so far.
And Charlie, do you think this is the right step or a step too far?
I think there's one good points, to be fair. My only concern really is that if immigrants' status is getting questioned every 2 years, what's going to push them to want to integrate themselves into British culture and learn the language? I think a lot of people's issues with immigration is that they're not integrating, because realistically we're not going to be able to deport every single person. It's a very big task, and in the short term people want integration, and I don't think that's going to happen if we're threatening to deport people after 2 years. I just don't think they're going to bother. I understand a lot of the points in it, and I think a lot of people are concerned about immigration and public safety and all that, but I just think it will result in a lot of issues that will then need even further reforms, and I don't think it will ever get sorted, really. It's just one of those issues.
I mean, the Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch has said the proposals did not go far enough, but suggested her party could offer support to get them through Parliament. Shahab, do you have any thoughts about that?
I think because the Labour Party can't do it by themselves, they will need the Conservative support. It's an issue that affects the British people. It is the people that want this change, and so if the political parties of the United Kingdom are able to unite together to tackle it, I think it's a good thing, and I think We need more unity within our government. We need less partisanship to tackle big issues such as the immigration crisis.
Does anybody here think this is all very, very harsh? We've seen people, especially the Green Party, coming out really going against this. We've heard the likes of Tommy Robinson supporting this. Nigel Farage, I believe, said the Home Secretary sounds like a Reform supporter. If you're a Labour supporter, what do you think, right? Like, is Labour left-wing anymore? Has this completely and utterly switched them to the right?
I definitely think one aspect of it is quite extreme. There's been a lot of discussions about seizing valuable assets from immigrants from asylum seekers who are coming over to pay for their accommodation. I don't know about you guys, but when I've seen those videos of 60 of them on a small dinghy, I'm not seeing any fur coats and gold chains. You know, it seems very weird to seize, like, there's a lot of discussion about jewellery. Is that going to include wedding bands, engagement rings, family heirlooms? I just don't think, even if there are the proper safeguards to ensure that no sentimental values products are taken, I don't think it's going to be a good look if we see on the news immigrants coming over and pleading with police officers or whoever it is that's seizing these assets, saying, please don't take this away from me, it means so much to me. I don't think it's going to be a good look for the government, whether it's the right thing to do or not. It's not a good look.
Do you think we have an illegal immigration issue then? Does everybody agree with that? Or
I think in terms of illegality, like, there's no issue with legal immigration. I don't think anyone in this country has an issue with legal immigration. I mean, we are in a service economy. I don't think many people sort of understand what that means, where we produce more jobs than we have people. And we need people to fill in those jobs and to fill in those gaps. If you are coming over to the country legally for job opportunities, for work, education, whatever like that, like, bring more people to do it. That's how you build up the economy to an extent. That is what we've been doing since, I guess, like Margaret Thatcher, in a sense. It's the illegal part of it that's the issue. It's the fact that these people are being brought over by sort of any means necessary, using gangs and stuff like that to sort of flood those streets in a way. Like, I don't want to use the word flood, it sounds aggressive. But what I'm meaning is that, like, if you were coming over part of a gang, you are then tied to that gang because you have to owe them something. Your shop or whatever like that is going to be tied to them. There are ways to get through the system legally. Yes, it might take a long time, but then being a part of that sort of umbrella term of illegal immigrant just puts you at risk of then eventually being removed from the country. If I was in that sort of situation, I'd rather wait to potentially have that legal status and have more protection.
So, is this a way back for Labour? I mean, we know that left-leaning people don't tend to be as strong as this, but Labour have definitely sort of set where they want to go with this. So, in the next election, who are they going to try and appease? Anyone?
Well, to be fair, when you were on about how is this sort of like a Labour policy, or are they going left-wing again? They've not been left-wing since really Tony Blair, if we're looking at it realistically. Though obviously I think...
You don't think Jeremy Corbyn was left-wing?
Well, I was gonna say, I think it was mentioned last week that obviously Jeremy Corbyn is probably the only, left-wing Labour Party member that's been in that position that has been truly Labour from the 50s and 60s. But they keep sort of hogging this middle ground of New Labour. Who they're going to try to appease in the next election? Well, I think they need sort of a miracle with that one. The Conservatives have their player base, people who are entrepreneurs, who are owning with enterprises, shops, corporations, stuff like that, will always go Conservative. Young people are going to the Greens and to Lib Dems. Some of the left-leaning members of Labour are going Greens and Lib Dems. The moderates are getting swept up by Reform UK. So I think they're going to be sort of left out hanging, really.
I do think there's been a few policies in this plan that have been overlooked. Like, there's been a few about workers' rights and immigrants coming over and making sure they're paid a reasonable amount. Because as a more left-wing person, my main concern when it comes to immigration is that these people are coming over, some of which trafficked, are stuck in this illegal system, and they're working for other illegal immigrants who don't pay the minimum wage, who don't respect their workers' rights, and a lot of them do fall victim to this. And that's my main issue with it. And there are a few policies in this plan to help that, but I think they're trying to take away votes from Reform with this policy, but they've completely lost the left-wing vote of Green now, I would say, if not your party as well. And I think Reform, they're too far gone to be able to steal votes from Reform. Reform's too good at appealing to the media, and Labour's really bad at functioning, to be honest.
Okay, well, we'll see how that goes. We'll move on then to our next topic, which is all about the assisted dying bill. An interesting one, because it's not really you're left or right with it. A lot of people have... I remember when there was the vote, you had people like Jeremy Corbyn and Nigel Farage voting on the same side. So it can just be through personal experiences that you form this opinion. But peers have called for more time to debate legislation which would introduce assisted dying in England and Wales, as the bill makes slow progress through the House of Lords. The legislation proposes allowing terminally ill adults with fewer than 6 months to live to apply for an assisted death. Which way would all of you have voted? I'd be interested to know. Charlie?
I think there's no right or wrong answer to this, and that's why it was an open vote. Like you said, it's not very left and right. I think it's up to personal opinion, and to be honest, I've not had much experience of, terminal illness or deaths in my life. I'm fortunate enough for that. I would vote in favour for the bill. I think it does bring a lot more dignity towards terminally ill people. There's been a lot of concerns from disabled people, rightfully so, about the safeguarding, but this bill is for terminally ill people, not disabled people. But I do definitely think they need to prioritise making sure that this bill is safeguarded properly and it's implemented properly so that disabled people aren't put at a disadvantage, because this goes so far beyond just, regular disadvantages that minorities face. Like, this is literally life and death, and I think it's so important to make sure that this is scrutinised and it is as smooth as possible. But from what I've seen, I would vote in favour for it.
I would also vote in favour for it. Off the basis, obviously, with stuff like dying with dignity. I think people don't like the term assisted dying. I think it's much more sort of more nuanced than that. If that person is terminally ill and they know that they are not going to have 6 months left to live, then they should have that option of saying, I've got my faculties right now, I know in 6 months' time I won't. Some people are more afraid of what they're going to, not afraid of the death aspect, but more afraid of what they're going to become during it. So like people with potentially like dementia or Alzheimer's, they might be more afraid of how they're going to be perceived by their own family and friends. They know that they're not going to recognise them. And obviously when you've got people with terminal cancers and stuff like that, they know that they're not going to be, they're not going to have that quality of life, and I think that's what it comes down to. Obviously, it's sort of like one of those things where it's like they should or shouldn't and stuff like that, but if your quality of life has gone to the point where it is so low, where that is your only option, and it's not like it's an easy option either. I think people sort of, especially politicians, are just like, as soon as we introduce this assisted dying bill, everyone with sort of like a mental health issue or anything like that, or anyone who wants to commit suicide is suddenly going to be like, oh yeah, I want this assisted dying bill. It's not like that. It's that sort of a sense where you have your faculties about you, you've tried to go through every single option, chemotherapy, radiotherapy, whatever, and then you're presented with that option. I think people should be allowed to take it.
Not to make this a unanimous decision, but I'd also vote yes. But for me, it's mainly based on my morals and principles. I believe that the individual knows what they want, and you should live with the consequences of your actions, and you should be free to do as you please, as long as it doesn't harm anyone else. And technically, your life is in your own hands. And so, if people wanted to, they could commit suicide, and they could do it in such a barbaric way. This way they have the dignity of doing it how they please, and so I would give it to them. However, it does upset me though that people do want to do it. I also look at places like Canada where they have legalized it, and from what I can tell, the Canadian healthcare system encourages it. They encourage people committing suicide so that they, like, not to talk badly about it, but apparently they do it so they can save money and stuff like that. And I fear that if we come to this situation, we come to a place where it's like, oh, well, you're a burden for the taxpayer, so you should kill yourself. And while I know it won't come to that, it can, and that scares me, and that aspect of it is quite horrific. But I would vote yes, just because I believe in the dignity of choice. I believe in the right of the individual to pick their own destiny, whether that be they remain living or they end it. Also, I like the idea of the assisted dying just because it makes you stop and think what you're doing with your life. You have to go through loads of processes. You have to go through proper therapy, and then they'll talk you, make you decide your decision. It's not a rash decision. Like when you commit suicide, it's because at that moment you're feeling so much emotion and you're like, I can't live anymore, I have to end it. This way, you talk to someone, they tell you your choices, they tell you whether it's right or well, they don't tell you whether it's right or wrong, but they tell you how someone may, your different aspects of it. The fact that then they delay it as well, you've got the time, you've got like 6 months or something, and that way you're able to live, you're able to think about your action before you fully do it. People who commit suicide, especially people who do it rashly, they're doing it just like that. They're not really thinking about it as they're doing it, and unfortunately that's cost so many lives. This way, people who are tempted to commit suicide at least have this revenue. But I don't want it to be available because I don't want people to do it, but I think in the end we should give them the choice.
Well, more than 900 changes have been proposed by peers, which experts believe is a record number for a piece of legislation put forward by a backbench MP. So it will only become law if both houses of Parliament agree on the final drafting, with approval needed before spring next year when the current session of Parliament ends. So you've all agreed, but certainly not everybody is, and it's definitely a big thing. But just to play devil's advocate here, what about people that are religious, for example, or, as much as our doctors and nurses are amazing, they do get it wrong. When you're given 6 months to live, people could actually have years left and could actually get more life than they originally thought.
I think in that sort of sense, when you're mentioning obviously religious people, that's why I think the House of Lords should not be involved in this decision whatsoever. The fact that every major bishop in this country, who is obviously a part of sanctity of life, which means that is a God-given life, that is their fundamental belief, will be so opposed to this sort of idea. And obviously we've got lords as well who are incredibly religious. It's sort of almost that we've got an atheist chamber and a religious chamber almost in this sort of question. I don't think personally should be involved in it. I like that we have the peers because half the time they are, 90% of the time, they're there for the legislation to be put through properly. Though I think we should go for more of a people's approach through the MPs. In the sense of obviously religious people and doctors in this country and stuff like that. Yes, doctors can get stuff wrong. I think it's a very marginalised percentage of wrong though. In the sort of sense where you are told that you've got 6 months or a year to live, it's sort of that sort of wiggle room. It depends on your body. And your body is unique in every sort of aspect. If you've been told that you've got 6 months to live, then somehow, if you look at Stephen Hawking, for example, he got told that he wouldn't make it till 20, and then he ended up living to surpass that into his 60s and 70s. But that was from his own body. Yes, there's medical help, but that's his body as well fighting it. Doctors can't predict that because science deals with the generic sort of outlook of it. Obviously, if you've got religious people and stuff like that, it always comes down to what they personally believe. Again, religion is sort of very unique in that sort of aspect where you can be religious, or you can believe in God, and then you can be religious in the sense where you strictly follow the practices. And there's wiggle room in between that as well. I think every avenue should be approached. I think the legislation should be made so that everyone is sort of happy. I don't think it will actually get to the point where everyone's happy. Someone's always going to be upset about it, but I think every avenue should be considered.
Yeah. Okay.
I completely agree. I think religion has no place in politics, no matter what religion it is. To me, I'm not anti the House of Lords necessarily, but I agree. I think that we live in a time now where we are a multicultural country with so many different religions and with science, and I think that needs to be prioritised over one single religion. I also think that while doctors can get it wrong, that applies to almost every medical practice, and I think I've obviously never been in the position, but I think that spending your last 6 months in an underfunded NHS hospital isn't really a way to live your final weeks, if not months.
Just to make a point, I disagree with the aspect that the House of Lords shouldn't be participating in it. The House of Lords represents the people as well. The archbishops represent the Christian population of the UK. They represent the views of the faith that a lot of people carry, and to completely ignore it isn't really of the people now, is it? But I do agree secular politics is best politics. But at the end of the day, the House of Lords can only delay the bill for a year. So, I think that's a good thing. I think the bill should be delayed as long as possible, just so that we can debate it more. We can see that they can think more critically about different aspects of it, and they'll point out more problems, and then the Commons will be able to debate these problems, and then it'll go back and forth. But that's a good thing. That's a process of our democracy. That's why it works so well, why our parliament is the oldest parliament in the world. It's because we've had this system. And so I do like that we have the Lords participating in it, even if they are causing delays because of their religion. And once again, this religion is the religion of the people. The people overwhelmingly follow Christianity. Well, not overwhelmingly, but it's like 50% at least are still Christian. And so to completely ignore that is quite cruel. And it's not just the Christian people. You've got people in the House of Commons that didn't vote based off their religion. I think, can't remember who it was, but there was a lot of Muslim MPs that voted against it as well because it goes against Islamic principles.
Yeah, okay, well, we'll move on to our last topic, so I don't believe we've got that much time left. We're going to start off with a yes or no answer. I just want a yes or just want a no. Starting with you, do you think the BBC are biased?
Yes.
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 Okay, so, a bit more context. The BBC has apologised to US President Donald Trump for a panorama episode that splice parts of his 6th of January 2021 speech together, but rejected his demand for compensation. The corporation said the edit had given the mistaken impression that Trump had made a direct call for violent action. Was the BBC in the wrong, and were they right to apologise? Does anybody disagree? Does anyone think they were correct?
I think they definitely should have apologised. I think
they have since apologised.
Yeah,
so
I think it was definitely the right thing to do. I think the whole payment is debatable. I think bankrupting the BBC is a bad idea, considering America's current press freedom state. I don't think we should really allow Donald Trump to bankrupt our main news source. I don't think it's a good idea. I think apology was due and it was delivered, but I don't think, while I agree the BBC it does have a obligation to be unbiased because it's paid for by the taxpayer, I think it brings the debate of, is it possible, given human error, for the BBC to be 100% unbiased on everything? And should they be? You know, there are issues like genocide, domestic violence, police brutality and corruption. Should they be 100% impartial on these kind of issues? And is that moral? What kind of morals should be put first? Should it be impartiality or should it be just basic ethics?
Yeah, I mean, well, Trump told reporters the figures could be anywhere between $1 billion and $5 billion. To put that into context, the BBC's annual income from the licence fee is $3.8 billion last year. Do you think they should compensate them, Logan?
I don't think they should have even apologised, to be fair. Donald Trump doesn't like being called out, and he got called out. He did say, it's not like the BBC fabricated the words that he said. Yes, you could argue that they edit it to make it look bad, but you did say those words. You first off incited that.
This was big. This meant, the Director General stepped down. So do you think they were right, though? They did nothing wrong here?
I don't think they did, because Donald Trump did say those words. He did incite... He sort of... Could you say that he incited violence? No.
Well, he was found to incite the riots by a US government report, to be fair. That's my kind of...
And then obviously he backtracked that.
Yeah.
And then obviously I think there was words of you should speak sort of patriotically, you should go down to Capitol Hill. I mean, you're sending... And obviously the whole sort of air of fraud, the lost election, the rigged election, you're sending a mass of people in the hundreds of thousands towards a politically charged area. I mean, I am not, history sort of repeats itself. I would point towards other sort of political marches and stuff like that where they are supposed to have been peaceful, but it only takes, say, if there's 100,000 people that went down there and 90,000 of them are peaceful, you still got 10,000 people who aren't, and 10,000 people is enough. And if you ask him, why did you do that? Well, Donald Trump has been saying that we've lost the election. It's a fraud campaign. He said that we should go down there. I want, my voice to be heard in front of their faces whilst I've got an axe in one hand.
Shahab, do you agree?
Not with you. Not at all. Slicing anyone's speech is ridiculous. To do that is an attack against their integrity as a journalist organisation. If you want to present yourself as a truthful, unbiased source, why are you slicing a piece of speech to sound like something it's not? Slicing in general is quite barbaric in the way that it can make it sound like you've done something that you're not. Though I do enjoy the although I do enjoy the Priti Patel slice edits with where she sings Savage. Brilliant. But see, you can make anyone say anything if you just slice a lot of their speeches, and so it's absurd that we're even saying that it should be acceptable. Well, I do think, though, the 5 billion is wrong. I don't think that's fair on the BBC, and if he wants to take us to court, he should take us to court in the UK, because it's a UK issue, so come here.
Well, I would reach a compromise then and say maybe they should apologise for editing what he said. However, they shouldn't apologise for the stuff that he's actually said. I think, again, he's sort of... his ego's been bruised, which I think is sort of ironic considering he's looking towards the BBC. I think, mate, you need to sort of look at your own country for starters instead of what we're reporting on. Is that sort of, I guess, ridiculous nature of personal politics.
Well, Donald Trump also has called the BBC worse than fake news. He claims the corporation and its journalists are corrupt. And there's an interesting thing with journalism because Twitter is on the rise. A lot of independent journalists on Twitter where people get their news from. And do you think that journalism is under attack, but also within the BBC, but there's trust issues with reporting in general?
Well, I found quite an interesting study/theory about there's loads of debates on whether the BBC is biased left wing or right wing. A lot of people on the left feel that they're too right, a lot of people on the right feel they're too left. Although one Cardiff University study and also Media Reform Coalition study suggested that the BBC does have an institutional bias, but it's not left-wing or right-wing, it's an establishment bias. So that basically means they mirror the elite voices of power. So when we saw the Conservatives in power, a lot of people feel that they mirrored those ideologies, and now that we see Labour in power, we see them reflect more left-wing ideology. It's also important to remember that a lot of board members were appointed by Conservative MPs in the BBC.
So saying whichever government is in, the BBC tends to go that way depending on which government.
There's a theory that they don't want to stray away from the status quo. And at least, the majority of citizens might disagree with them, but in the elites and in that kind of, locked room that we don't have access to as regular citizens, they're going along with what those people say.
Do you have your own opinion on if you think it's left or right in terms of bias to BBC?
I was always unsure because obviously we saw really strong bias against Jeremy Corbyn at the time of him running for Prime Minister. But after seeing this theory, I think that is what I kind of agree with. It does make sense that whoever the elites are, they tend to go along with that. I mean, not to get too deep into conspiracy theories, but we did see the BBC covering Israeli deaths 33 times more per fatality than Palestinian deaths in the first year of the genocide. Obviously, Israel is quite a dominant country in geopolitics compared to Palestine, at least. So I do think that given that the BBC, it is a big, powerful corporation. Big, powerful corporations tend to look out for each other. Even though it's taxpayer funded, we've always kind of seen this pattern.
Do you agree?
Sorry, just wanted to add. You were talking about Israel-Palestine and how the BBC reported it, but what was your opinion on how the Arabic BBC reported the issue? Because from what I've heard, they had a very Palestinian bias in it, and where they were kind of promoting Hamas ideology, and so that wasn't really good, was it?
Yeah, no, definitely. The Telegraph did an investigation into whether the BBC was showing a bias towards Palestine over Israel, because they were covering more crimes from the Israelis than Hamas. I do think that it's been very wishy-washy, the way that the media has presented this conflict since it started. People have gone from one side to another. I mean, I don't really think that... I think now I would say the BBC is more on Palestine's side, but in the first year of the conflict it was clear that they were more Israeli sided. But I definitely think that it is whatever the elites are believing, that is what the BBC is portraying, because at least it makes the most sense to me from what I've seen.
To sort of go, I guess, a little bit to sort of out of that sort of spectrum, in the sort of, do I think I think Donald Trump calling BBC fake news is sort of ridiculous in itself. Yeah. I think if you get banned off Twitter, and then you have to come up with your own app called Truth Social because you keep getting called out for all your fake news. I think that sort of speaks for itself. On the subject of, I guess, BBC being biased, I think they are, but I wouldn't know whether that theory is correct or not. In that sort of sense, where for a time there was sort of the media was against John Bishop, John Major, not John Bishop. The media was against John Major until The Sun came in, and then all of a sudden BBC and The Sun are saying that John Major's great. Tony Blair was really good for the BBC, using the same spin doctor, Alistair Campbell. And then obviously you get Gordon Brown, where the media then sort of starts to dip, obviously after the housing market crash, and then obviously the expense scandals is where we sort of start to see that sort of dip. I would sort of say that, at least in this time, the BBC I don't think they're necessarily portraying the Green Party or the Liberal Democrats in the light that they deserve. I think they are avoiding specific things. They are mentioning some things and they're mentioning some good things, but they are very negatively.
One thing I often see, I'm a massive viewer of Question Time, and I often see a lot of right-wing Reform UK. Got to wrap up. I was going to stop waffling, but I'm not going to. But at least you three have had your say. Thank you ever so much, guys, for coming on, and thank you very much for watching. We'll see you later. Goodbye.
Finish the thought.
I was just going to say...